Senator Dan Sullivan is a Republican on the Armed Services Committee. Senator Sullivan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Anita.
You're welcome. The top military generals pretty much all contradicted each other during the past couple of days in these hearings on Capitol Hill. They all said they advised the president to leave some small number of troops there, 2,500. The president says they didn't. So now we have a situation where we have a lot of weapons left behind. I want to put up on the screen for you the numbers of some weapons we have. 600,000 weapons, 75,000 vehicles left behind. Who is going to be held accountable for this?
Well, look, Anita, the hearings yesterday, I think the two main takeaways from that is this foreign policy fiasco, and you're listing one of the reasons on the weapons, but this entire fiasco is President Biden's. He owns this. And, you know, you saw it yesterday in the hearing where the generals said that they did say, let's leave a residual force. That was their advice to the president. And not only that, they predicted the catastrophe that we would see. So Joe Biden owns this, but here's something else that came out of this hearing, which was, to me, very disturbing. The president has clearly not been leveling with the American people. And you just mentioned on one of the big ones. He mentioned just a month ago that none of his military advisors told him to keep forces in Afghanistan. We know that that's completely not true. He mentioned that al-Qaeda was gone from Afghanistan. That's not true. He told the American people he would keep the military in Afghanistan until every American citizen who wanted to get out, got out. That was not true. And here's the big one. He's been saying that this was, quote, an extraordinary success. General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, yesterday in the hearing, or 2 days ago in the Senate hearing, said that it was not an extraordinary success. It was a strategic failure. So these are not minor misstatements that the president has been telling the American people. These are fundamental falsehoods. They're lies on the most critical aspects of this fiasco. And one of the things I was pressing the generals on is who is responsible, who's going to be held accountable. And right now, I think it should be Joe Biden, but there's been nobody.
Well, also, General Mark Milley said the Taliban is still a terrorist organization. They still have ties with al-Qaeda, and that al-Qaeda or ISIS could reconstitute as early as next spring. That is very scary. What should the U.S. be doing to prepare for that?
Well, look, the military leaders in this hearing 2 days ago in the Senate were very clear about this threat that you just mentioned, that al-Qaeda and others, ISIS, the Haqqani network, will be reconstituting. I mean, you know, when you think about it, we went to Afghanistan after 9/11 to make sure it would never become a safe haven for terrorism again. The way in which this chaotic withdrawal happened, it ensures that it is now, once again, the world's haven for terrorists. And obviously, that's a huge challenge. What we're going to continue to do in the Senate is continue to press for oversight. Matter of fact, we had a hearing in the Armed Services Committee just this morning on this very topic. Both the witnesses, the Democrat and Republican witnesses in front of the Armed Services, laid out how this was a catastrophe. And we're also introducing legislation. I co-sponsored legislation we introduced earlier this week, the Afghanistan counterterrorism oversight legislation that's going to be focused in the way in which we can, the U.S. Senate, can focus on this. But accountability's got to come in the executive branch.
Well, accountability may come at the ballot box, right?
That's right.
I want to turn to, there were also a lot of questions about a new book coming out and General Milley reacting, or reaching out rather, to China about whether President Trump was planning an attack. Some lawmakers say that amounts to treason. Let's listen to this exchange.
These are two great powers, and I am doing my best to transmit the president's intent, President Trump's intent, to ensure that the American people are protected from an incident that could escalate.
I understand your intent, but I think you articulating that you would tell him, you would give him a call, I think is worthy of your resignation. I just think that's against our country, that you would give our #1 adversary that information and tell him that.
So what about that, Senator? Since when do we warn other unfriendly nations about our military plans? Is that appropriate?
No, that's not appropriate. And I pressed General Milley in the Senate hearing on this very topic. There's a couple issues here. You know, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and our senior military leaders regularly have contacts with other military leaders, including some of our adversaries, the Russians, the Chinese. I think having those lines of communication, that's important. But what I mentioned to General Milley was, do you think that if a Chinese military leader somehow said, hey, they would give us a heads up before they invaded Taiwan, do you think someone in China would do that? The obvious answer to that is no. Xi Jinping wouldn't allow that. I mentioned, heck, Xi Jinping would probably shoot a general that did something like that. So what's happening right now is General Milley's saying one thing, the book is saying another thing. It's an important issue to continue to get the details on, but all of this came out in the hearing, and again, we're going to keep pressing for the details on these and the other issues, but I do think we need to stay focused on Afghanistan. That foreign policy fiasco that the president solely owns is going to have ramifications for our country probably in the very near term, not just with terrorism, but as I mentioned in the hearing today, I think other countries are going to test us. I think Russia, China, Iran are going to test us because they're testing our credibility, and we better be ready and we better be strong.
All right. All right. Senator Dan Sullivan, thank you so much for your insights.